Good morning, everybody. This is Michael Darger beaming out from University of Minnesota campus in St. Paul. I'm actually on campus today. So welcome to all of you. We have a nice mix of people. And before we get started, I thought it would be kind of fun to just have people raise their hands if you're from Minnesota, and then we can have people raise their hands who are from elsewhere. So those of you who are from Minnesota, if you want to hit the you can do a thumbs up or do the little hand wave thing on your screen. It's under the reactions button down below, just for fun. Let's see. Yeah, okay, lots of Minnesotans here. And again, it's the reactions button down below on your menu bar. I know Carla, there you go, Carla got it. Okay, and now, very good. Welcome to the North Star State people. Let's welcome anyone who's from outside of Minnesota. So if you're from outside of Minnesota right now, go ahead and give a thumbs up or a wave. And hello, Brett. And I think, so I think there's some others, but yeah, Bailey, great. So welcome to everybody. I know we have an economic development and a tourism audience, and we're recording this session, so it'll be available later. I will also send out an evaluation after the webinar is done. So please help us, tell us what you think, and tell us what other topics you'd like to see, and we'll try our best. But without further ado, we will introduce Dr. Xinyi Xian, who is my colleague and a specialist with the Tourism Center at the University of Minnesota, and she will introduce our special guest, Stephanie.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. And again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today. And thanks to Michael and my other colleagues. Today's webinar is focused on the travel and the tourism industry. And the title is Destination Marketing Organizations in a Challenging Time, How We Adapt for a Sustainable Future. And it is my great honor to introduce our guest speaker today, Ms. Stephanie Busiahn. Stephanie has been in her current role as the Executive Director of Visit Fairmont in southern Minnesota for years. Stephanie has held leadership roles in a variety of regional and state associations, including past president of Minnesota Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau and the South Minnesota Tourism Association. She is a member of the Explore Minnesota Tourism Council, serving her second term. Locally, Stephanie sits on the Fairmont Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, the Fairmont Community Education and Recreation Advisory Board is a Rotarian and serves on the Rotary Board. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for your time, and we all very much look forward to hearing from your stories and experiences today. And
Thank you.
Yeah, you are very welcome. Well, I guess we'll just get started, and I do have a few questions for Stephanie. And the first question that I want to ask Stephanie is, how have you as a Convention and Visitors Bureau have adapted in the past 8 months or so in response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that intro, and thank you all for joining today. It's my honor and pleasure. So COVID-19 and this pandemic has been quite interesting. As we see, the hospitality industry has been one of the hardest hit industries throughout all of this. So for us here locally, one of the things that we did, first and foremost, we started to take a little bit of a shift. Being a Convention and Visitors Bureau, being a DMO, our budget comes from a 3% sales tax on our lodging facilities. So we are very much focused and geared towards our visitor, those people that are coming into our community. Prior to the pandemic, there are other DMOs that have started this switch or this transition a little bit, but certainly the pandemic helped us through that process a little bit. And that was to take a shift and look more locally, look more community-wide. We started looking at, what are the things that we can do to help support our local businesses, Not that we weren't doing that before, but taking a look at diving a little bit deeper into that. Also, what are the things that we can do to help our residents? What's good for our residents is good for our visitors. And so through this pandemic, that has been kind of a shift and an approach that we are taking. And in all honesty, I think that will be much more of a focus even post-pandemic for us and for my organization. Certainly we'll try and find a balance down the road, but for the immediate future, definitely looking a little more close to home, a little more internally throughout our community, figuring out ways that we can help and transition. A couple of other pieces that we looked at. We're very fortunate here in Fairmont to have amazing natural resources. We have a lot of green space, a chain of 5 lakes right in our community. So thankfully, that outdoor side of things, we were able to market and promote a little bit, still trying to look at that closer to home. But again, reminding our residents of the amazing assets that we have. Sometimes we forget about what we have in our back door. So those are some of the things that we worked through. We gathered information. We reached out to other organizations, understanding that a lot of our local businesses were having a hard time. There was new rules thrown at them, and they couldn't operate status quo. And I probably will say this multiple times throughout this presentation, but my hat goes off to the hospitality industry and to those businesses that have truly started to think outside the box and figured out a way to still continue to do business. They have done a phenomenal job, are extremely resourceful, and have found a way, which is amazing. So in my organization, one of the things that we worked through was being a resource gatherer and understanding that those small businesses or those local businesses didn't necessarily have time to go and find, the proper documentation or the research or the guidelines. So I spent a lot of my time early and mid-pandemic attending webinars and participating in Zoom meetings and just being a resource gatherer and finding the information so that it was easily accessible for our businesses.
Very cool, and it's a wealth of information. And I must say, in the past 8 months, as a tourism specialist at the tourism center, I'm also scanning the horizon near constantly. I can definitely echo this expedited shift from being mostly a destination marketing organization to a destination marketing and sort of like management organization or say engagement organization, and campaigns being more informational and being more local, and also having outdoor recreational activities as an asset. This is what has been fortunate for our entire state, I dare to say, and it is a very important industry sector for us as well, especially if we look at the Bureau of Economic Analysis's outdoor recreation satellite account. It is a sizable industry, accounting for a significant portion of our state GDP. Since they started tracking, and so I think Stephanie really hit some very important point. And it also struck me when you mentioned that you have been a resource gatherer, which leads nicely to my next question for you, which is what resources have you and businesses in your community found useful?
Sure. One of the resources that I've tapped into a lot is my colleagues and is my associations and my networks. And that has been extremely helpful. I would strongly encourage anyone that, isn't quite as involved as they maybe would like to be with a trade association or colleagues. I mean, that is what has helped, so many of us, myself included, get through this time, is that we're all trying to figure this out together. And there's there's no shame in pulling everybody's ideas together and figuring out kind of some best practices. And so I would strongly encourage that. Explore Minnesota. And I know that there's maybe a couple, I thought I saw a handful of people on from Explore Minnesota. Our statewide tourism organization, has been incredibly helpful and supportive to the tourism industry. I can't say enough good things about John Edmond and all of his staff, and helping DMOs like myself work through this, providing us educational opportunities through webinars and Zoom, and having resources has been significantly helpful. The other, on a financial standpoint, resources we've found locally that we work very closely together, but really tapping in and pulling those organizations, our chamber, our economic development authority, and Visit Fairmont, our local DMO, has really kind of pulled together to try and figure out, who's sharing what information. Again, there's so much information coming at us. There's not necessarily a need to duplicate efforts. So who's kind of taking point on certain issues and certain topics, and working closely together to disseminate that information to our community and our county has certainly been helpful. Working through some of the financial resources. Again, our chamber and our economic development authority have kind of taken the lead on finding financial resources for our local businesses, whether that be CARES Act, other grants, those types of things. But I guess really the bottom line for us, especially being in a relatively small community, was ensuring that we were communicating and talking back and forth to each other, and understanding, whose role, where does your role start and stop, and making sure that everybody was doing what they needed to do to move the needle and rally around our community to support them.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I have a follow-up question, sort of, because given that you mentioned how all different types of entities have been working together at the same time, your messaging and your focus have been shifted more towards locals. So do you have a feel about how local residents feel about welcoming back visitors in a community? If you have done any work in this regard to prepare to communicate with local residents, I'm sure many of folks on our will appreciate your experiences.
Yeah, that has certainly been something that has been an issue, as I've had conversations with colleagues. And thankfully for us, here in Fairmont, we're relatively diverse when it comes to tourism. We certainly have a large sector of leisure travel, but we definitely rely on some ag tourism, some interstate traffic located right on the interstate, some stopover, which essentially ceased to exist for quite a long time. So it was a little bit more of a mixing pot here. I have had colleagues that have really struggled with that concept of understanding that, and some of these, in some of these cases, it was a community that was very supportive of tourism, that understood the economic development and the economic side of tourism, and understanding what that can do for a community. The fact that they needed those visitors, they need those outside dollars to sustain their community and their local businesses. But the pandemic certainly shifted things, and it started to get people thinking and questioning, and feeling like we're not okay with outside people coming into our community right now, and is it safe? And I think that now, during pandemic, post-pandemic, I think that we've seen a lot of shifts and changes, and that is going to be a critical and crucial message that we send not only to our local residents but to our visitors, is that idea of safety. I certainly think that as a DMO, we can lead the charge in sending out that messaging to our visitors and our residents, explaining to them, what our community and what our local businesses are doing to keep people safe. And I think that we will probably continue to see that for quite a long time in our messaging as we move forward, locally, through our residents and our community, but also as we continue to bring in more visitors, sharing that message, encouraging businesses to share that message. Because at the end of the day, that is what it's all about. People are concerned about their safety, and rightfully so. But there is a way that we can manage, and there is a way that we can do this, as long as we're acknowledging the safety precautions that are taking place.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, in the communications, lots of them, the appropriate messaging so that we hopefully together resolve the us versus them dilemma almost, because I know this has been almost like the big elephant in the room. So thank you for helping us together we can address it. And I do have one more question about resources, which is what additional resources do you and or businesses in your community wish to have?
Yeah, I think through all of this, one of the pieces for us here that really struck was kind of a communication plan. And we figured out, who was doing what along the way. But I think that moving forward, a more concrete plan, it took us a little bit. It took us a little bit to figure out, what lane was everybody going to be in, ensuring that we didn't have, a crash in the middle of everything. So making sure that, we now know a couple of pieces that I think will help us in the future. So figuring out a communication plan, figuring out a game plan, moving forward. This certainly, especially for our industry, it probably won't be the last issue that we see. So figuring out better communication methods, creating better listservs, breaking things down in terms of segments throughout our community. What messaging are we sending to our attractions, and what messaging are we sending to our restaurants and bars? And so figuring out a better way, a better communication platform, I think for that will certainly be a resource. I want to touch on a little bit also kind of the resources in terms of recovery and as we look to the future, kind of reminding, the leisure and hospitality industry is a significant sector in the state of Minnesota, as well as in the upper Midwest. Here in Minnesota, the Minnesota tourism industry is a $16 billion a year industry. We add over $1 billion in sales tax revenues and provide over 11% of private sector jobs. With that, as we have seen this industry hit so hard, we will definitely see implications for state and local governments as we see a loss. Over $300 million in state revenue from loss from travel spending. We have seen it will certainly have a ripple effect. And so kind of tying that or going full circle, I know that Explore Minnesota had recently launched a gratitude campaign, which is incredibly spot on. And I would strongly encourage, again, sometimes this industry is one that we just take for granted. We love going out to eat, or we love, hanging out at the local pub, but reminding people that it's that gratitude. And I think we've seen here locally, our community residents really rally around our businesses, our hospitality industry, and support them through closure, whether that be takeout or however they needed to do it. And I think that gratitude campaign, like I said, certainly is spot on. Now more than ever, we need to show gratitude and show thankfulness for that industry. They are certainly needing a virtual hug, a virtual lift up. So I would encourage that. They are resilient. They're an amazing industry that thinks outside the box and figures out ways to do things. But it certainly is going to be a long recovery. I've seen pieces that look, 12, 18, 24 months, again, depending on what sector that we're looking at in terms of recovery, but it's not going to happen overnight. And would strongly encourage people to locally try and find a way for a gratitude campaign. I think that can go a long way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I see that the clock is 9:21. And so according to Michael's opening remarks, it is time for questions and answers. So Michael, what do we have got?
Sure, we have a nice question from Bailey, and I'll just read it because it's substantive, but it really gets to the heart of this. With the Minnesota governor's most recent executive order closing down bars and restaurants, do you have any creative ways they can keep from closing their doors for good, or ways that chambers can help them? We have a local bar who just came under new young ownership. They are really struggling, as the only food they sell are frozen pizzas, which many won't come out for curbside pickup because they can just make a frozen pizza at home. Also, how are you showing support for your local businesses through the struggles of the pandemic? And we already heard you say the virtual hug and the emotional support. So yeah, here's a nice, easy question for you, Stephanie.
Yeah. I guess anything that you can do to continue to get the word out. I know there's been some, gift certificate kind of giveaway things, or, we've talked about here a little bit. I know my colleague in Duluth, Anna Tansky, had done a fantastic job of, really pulling together and doing I think a 30 days of thanks, or providing gift cards and doing some drawings and such to really encourage locals to support those local businesses. The bars are really going to be the tough sell, especially when they have minimal food right now. I would say, anything you can do in terms of social media campaigns, or make it fun. Look to the future in terms of trying to, bring in some future business once, the restrictions ease up a little bit and we start to see some of those businesses being allowed to open their doors a little bit more. Especially now with the holidays. Yeah, I say, just do what you can. It is tough. It is really tough. But I think, marketing and promoting them specifically to their locals, maybe doing a highlighting of a business. Did you know? Try and make it personal. People want to know about those owners and their stories, and sometimes that pulls at heartstrings and makes it a little bit more personal.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I also want to point out that one of my colleagues, Bridget Tuck, our senior economic impact analyst, she is here with us today as well, attending the webinar, and she put in a chat box a web link, and I would encourage you to click on the link because Extension has done some case studies on approaches that communities have taken trying to help out local businesses. And I also see one follow-up questions from another attendee. The question is, easily switch licenses from on sale to off sale?
Do we have any liquor experts here from the state of Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot answer that one. I'm sorry.
Well, we very much see it as a learning opportunities as well, given I do believe we have a critical mass of attendees here. So if anyone happens to know, have information in this regard, I would encourage you to pipe up.
And while we're waiting, there's a nice question from Alex. So I'll go ahead and send it. So So this is from Alex, who's there in Fairmont. As a Fairmont resident, I know one of the things people want to see here is more young folks staying in the area or coming back to the area. Do you have any strategies to specifically attract young people to Fairmont?
We're actually currently working through, we're partnering our Visit Fairmont, our Chamber of Commerce, and our Economic Development Authority are working on it's called the Fairmont Area Life Campaign. And we're looking at specific areas throughout the state, mainly the Twin Cities metro area, and doing some campaigning and some social media and some geofencing around some of those areas, and encouraging people to reevaluate and look at, some of those other opportunities. We see here in Fairmont, a significant amount of our residents are coming here to visit family and friends. So trying to tap in that way and, push out information regarding, job opportunities and our education system and those types of things is kind of a reminder that, you're maybe coming here to visit family, but have you thought of relocating or taking up residency here?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna. I know it's kind of a tough day today because we just had the governor's order yesterday, and we didn't know that was going to happen before this webinar. So we're all kind of, especially people in your hospitality and tourism industry. I just want to give a shout out because I can't think of an industry that's been hit harder by this pandemic, but many industries have. So I want to think out 3, 6, 9 months and think about the future because, vaccines are coming and hope is on the horizon. And, so thinking in terms of the good of this industry, Stephanie, and maybe any of the Explore Minnesota tourism folks want to chime in on the chat, or we can ask them to unmic, but what are you thinking about for the future in terms of recovery? Because there definitely is going to be some hits. We're going to lose some businesses, and even if they haven't died, there's some going to die in the out months here. So, just a few thoughts on that.
Yeah, I like I said, I think that there are some sectors that will obviously recover quicker than others. That group business is going to be a long haul, I think. I think it'll be quite a while before we see some of that business corporate travel in those groups. But I think that, a benefit, I guess, is that people love to travel. People love adventure. That is going to be one of the things that I think they come back to as soon as they possibly can. It's what fills a lot of people's cups. It's, those new adventures. I think we'll start as we did early on. I think that first phase, again, we continue to see a lot of day trippers, a lot of road trippers. People, again, for us locally, especially for the state of Minnesota, we're seeing people that maybe had those plans to travel abroad or to travel a little bit farther away from home that are saying, you know what, that's probably not a good idea, but I can't give up travel completely. I can do it. And so, we're seeing people stay closer to home, and we're seeing people stumble on, some of our destinations that maybe wouldn't have done so in the past. So I think for that purpose, people are eager to get out as soon as they can. We, as Minnesotans, we see that every year come spring. People are eager and itching to get outside and to, travel and get around the state. And I think that, the silver lining that will happen for us. But it is going to be a little bit tricky. I think, again, we go back to that messaging of safety. And I think as long as our visitors and our residents are feeling safe and understand that there are precautions and then there are process in place. And I would say, don't be shy about that. Be very crystal clear, put it on your door or put it out on social media. These are the things that we are doing to keep our staff or our visitors or our customers safe. I think people appreciate that. They want to know.
Say, just a timing note here. We reached the half an hour mark, and so we're going. Stephanie and Shinyi are both able to go for another 15 minutes. So those who can stay with us, are welcome to stay, but we're just going to let people off the hook here who have to go. And it's a half-an-hour webinar to hold up our promise. But we have some other comments. So anyone who can stay, we're going to keep going for a while, and we'll cut it off at 9:45.
And I would strongly encourage folks before leaving, just take a quick at the chat box, given comments. You guys have been sharing what you have seen and heard and learned along the way. And so these are very much the peer learning that I had hoped would happen, and it is happening right now. So thank you very much to all the folks sharing your experiences and tips. Thank you.
Right. And so one of those is kind of a question from Carla, and that is, does the governor's set of orders, does it preclude people from consuming outdoors? And so she's referring to, the yurt-like, tent-like structures, for outdoor. And I think the gathering prescription, no gatherings with people outside of your household, would preclude that for the next 30 days from my read, but maybe if anyone knows better. But comments on that, Stephanie?
Yeah, that was my impression, is that at least for the next 4 weeks until December 18th, that those would be. I know that there's a couple of locations in southern Minnesota that have put up some of those igloo type things, and that is per governor's orders, as I understand it, not allowed. They can do takeout, but cannot consume on premise, indoor and outdoor.
And I also see a commenter from Richard Baker regarding license. He said, my experience with the cities and liquor licenses is that each city sets a limit on both. You can apply for both an sale license as well as an off-sale license. I know the bowling alley in my hometown in southeast Minnesota has. Your bowling alley may want to look at adding a deep fryer and or a grill, so they can allow the takeout with just adding some simple equipment. Thank you so much for sharing, Richard. And also, I would encourage folks to check out Explore Minnesota Tourism's halo effect research. I think this has been very important part of what we collectively do in terms of resident recruitment, welcome comers. It is that the sense of, you go vacation to a destination area. You may or may not go back over and over again, but anyhow, the point is, at first you were a visitor and the destination has left a very positive impression on you. And through time, through experiences and all the positive impressions, eventually you or your business may choose to settle or relocate, or however we want to say it, in this community, which started out first and foremost as your travel destination. So Explore Minnesota Tourism has worked with research firms to do research on this halo effect for quite a while now. So I would encourage folks to check it out if you are not already familiar with it.
Okay, Stephanie, I don't know if you can see it, but Brett told me that he sent you a private chat question, and if you're willing to answer that, please do.
Yes, I just saw that. Sorry, Brett. So it says, we recently received funding through Create Bridges for our region. We have put together a steering committee. We have learned a lot from a recent BR&E class through the University of Minnesota. Like your area, tourism and natural resources are prominent. What advice do you have as we proceed with this project? So Brett, can you tell me a little bit about the Create Bridges and what that exactly is? I'm not sure that I'm familiar with that.
If he can't unmute, I'll tell you, because he took our class. And Brett and Susan are here today from Southern Illinois. But Create Bridges is a national program. It's mostly out of the southern states. And it's all about, it's an acronym that stands for sustaining entertainment, tourism, accommodations, and tourism businesses. and it's all about sustaining them over time. So it's using the business retention and expansion, which is all about kind of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. That's the part of economic development where you take care of, I think everyone here knows that, taking care of businesses you ever have. But they're gearing it not toward manufacturers and the big companies in town. They're gearing it specifically toward your sector, Stephanie. And so it's a really creative adaptation. I don't know if Susan or Brett want to say anything in the chat, but I guess they're just looking for your thoughts about BR&E as it relates to your industry.
I guess one of the things that we found incredibly helpful, we've gone through a visitor profile. And so through the University of Minnesota Tourism Center, which has been extremely helpful for us. So essentially we're surveying, we're gathering information and data from people that are already here and trying to figure out, why they've come. Essentially, their purpose, was this their end destination, how long they were here, what did they plan to do when they were here, those types of things. Again, that information has been invaluable for us. That is one of the pieces that we figured out. A lot of people that are coming here are coming to visit family and friends. So looking at that approach just a little bit differently, again, more of a rationale, a reason for us to inform our local community and our local residents about the things that we have going on. We have shifted and done some kind of local campaigns, reminding our residents and our community members kind of what we do, where we're marketing, to help build that. For many, many years, our approach was, of course, we're not marketing to you. You're not going to stay overnight in our hotels. You live here. You have a home. You have a bed that you're going to go to every night. But we have over the years found that is a critical piece. We've actually added that to our budget. Essentially, it's a line item that we have conversations about every year. How are we doing community outreach? How are we sharing our message with our locals, with our residents, kind of closing the circle and letting them know. So I think that could potentially be valuable if you're figuring out, who's coming, why they're coming, to really build on some of those pieces, build on those businesses that are already there, cross promote, put together packages. If there's a handful of attractions, or, I know you had said natural resources, some state parks and things like that. Itineraries are big, top 10 lists, really pushing those messaging out and kind of hand feeding the visitors the information that you're really looking at providing for them. Does that help?
Yeah, and we'll see what Brett says. Brett, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, yes, that helps as far as the tourism itself, but we've got on our steering committee, and I'm probably missing some elected officials, businesses, the employees of the businesses, state and federal agencies, economic development personnel, and also educational institutions. So I guess what advice can you give as we, again, put this steering committee together or have, and reach out to the businesses in the area, especially as Michael said, tourism, entertainment, and businesses like that?
Yeah. So kind of like just wanting to make sure you have the right people at the table. Other ideas is
right. Yes.
Yeah. And that's something that's interesting that I have found, especially, as I had mentioned earlier, I was new to this position 14 years ago, obviously, came right out of college, had never answered to a board of directors. And, in the nonprofit world was a little bit different. And so even I see it in my local board meetings where I have, business owners in the private sector that want to move. They want to move much, much quicker than, what we can for a nonprofit or what they do in the public sector. So that mix of kind of understanding that sometimes things take a little bit longer. I would say, an entrepreneur or, a business owner that can really bring some perspective on those businesses and how they operate might be beneficial.
Yeah, and what I'd comment there is that what Brett's team will be doing traditionally is reaching out to the businesses themselves. And what you described, Stephanie, and what the U of M Tourism Center does is to talk to the customers, the visitors, and do visitor profiles and tourism intercepts, and so there's two different information streams there. There's what are the customers thinking and what are the businesses thinking. And I think what both of you are saying here is it's critical to be aware of what are the concerns and the intentions. And of course, everything's kind of in turbulence right now. So, but there's two important data streams there, and neither one, both are important, but neither one is really sufficient.
Yeah, exactly.
There's another question.
And as Michael said, we are, reaching out to the businesses themselves. And of course, with the COVID situation, it's all going to be virtual right now.
Sure. And there's a comment from Susan, who's one of your partners there, about wanting to survey tourists as they continue with the Create Bridges program. And then we have another a question coming in here from Evan. And I think then that'll probably be our last one. But do the funds that were provided have to be used in a specific way? Or are you looking for a good way to use them? It may be helpful. Apologies if you've already considered this. It may be useful if you've used some of these funds as a form of a grant or loan to some of these small businesses to get individual consultations that would be geared toward their specific needs. That's directed to you, Stephanie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Brett. Okay, so
or was that to Brett? Where was that going, Evan? Oh, it's to Brett. Okay, Evan.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Evan.
Yeah, that's an interesting. How are those? I mean, are you locked in to utilize those dollars in a specific way, Brett?
Susan can probably better answer that, but I think it's fairly broad. It's not real specific. Susan, you got comments there?
And by the way, while we're waiting for Susan, we've had a bunch of the Create Bridges grantees in our recent online BR&E courses. So there may be, go ahead, Susan.
Oh, sorry, I'm multitasking at the moment. So we're in Extension Annual Conference as well. So I'm listening two different ears here. So with the Create Bridges project, we do have some flexibility in how we use the money, but we will have to put together a proposal that will be submitted to the Southern Rural Development Center, to ensure that we're spending the money in a way that they feel is beneficial. But really to direct how the money is spent is that we will be going through surveys of the community and also surveys of the businesses and employees in the region to really determine their needs. And then the regional steering committee comes together and submits a proposal on how they feel like we can best benefit both the businesses and the employees in the Create Bridges sector. So of retail, accommodations, tourism, and entertainment. So.
Oh, she knows the acronym. Way to go, Susan. Well, thank you, Susan and Brett, for bringing in that kind of spice. And I would imagine that the Southern Rural Development Center out of Mississippi State will be flexible because obviously these are unprecedented times. Thank you so much, Stephanie and Xinyi.
Yes, and Michael, sorry to interrupt, but before letting everybody go, I just want to share what Kathy pointed out, that they're going to be today at noon, leaders from the Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, Department of Health, and Department of Labor Industry will host a webinar today at noon to expand on new information. And the link to join the webinar is equally long, so I took the liberty to Z it which means I make it shorter. And I just literally put the link into the chat box. So if you are interested in attending this webinar today, again, today at noon, here is the link to join the webinar. And thank you again, Kathy, for sharing this very timely and I believe critically important information. Thank you.
Yes, and so once again, thanks to all of you. And Sharon put an interesting, creative, idea in the chat for a last thought here. But we're going to record this session, and please do look for the evaluation that I'll send out later in the day, and give us your thoughts. And thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, stay well, and keep your head up.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Stephanie, for this incredibly informative webinar. Thank you for generously sharing with us your experiences.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.